Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Finding Truth audio cast. We're feeling good today. It's a Saturday, it's great outside, green all around. The only downside is that we have a whole bunch of pollen because surrounding our entire house are oak trees with all the pollen that you can ever imagine. And I was good until that thought pops in your head of, oh man, maybe I won't be affected by the pollen this year. Well, not long after it hit, I was flying my drone around, I was talking to family, and then I got to the deck and it hit me. Man, when you start sneezing once, it's almost like it opens up the floodgates and you just start sneezing again and again, over and over again. But I was listening to a YouTube podcast. Somebody was talking about, what their mental state was like years and years ago. And it made me think about what my mental state was like. And I know I just started off super positive and happy, but I don't know, it just piqued my interest, and I was like, well, I know what mine was like years and years ago at 15. And so, I don't know. I'm just going to share it, and I don't really know why. But I guess this is a Saturday Thoughts segment, or it's just a post. But either way, when I was 15 and a half, I started experiencing depression, or what I thought was depression. It could have been. And I started getting like cloudy memory. I started experiencing some of the symptoms like the low mood and I got this weird type of forgetfulness that just came upon me all of a sudden. And there were weird things that happened to my mind when that depression came into my life. I remember sitting at a light and I was looking at it and it turned green. And in my mind, it wasn't registering that green means go. Now, you're all taught when you're growing up, especially, like red light, green light, you play that when you're young. You have, you train for the DMV to go get your license, to get your permit, to get your license. So you read up on all of that. This means go, this means stop, this means yield, all of that stuff. And I knew that. It's ingrained in you, it's common sense, but when whatever happened hit, I was staring at the light and it wouldn't register in my mind. And so I'd go, but I'd be super cautious. I'd be thinking, I really hope that green means go, because if it doesn't, that's going to be really bad if a car runs into me. And how am I going to explain that to the owner? And then explain that to my family, and also probably be sent to a doctor or something to get evaluated, because, they'd be concerned about that. And luckily it never happened, but man, the uncertainty that you experience when you're dealing with that type of problem is just, you can't explain it. And I had other problems too with that. I was in a store once, and this was still around 15 and a half, and it was a Target, and I remember being there with my dad and my sister, and I was getting this, like I was second guessing whether they were actually my family. I couldn't recognize, I was looking at them, and I was second guessing whether they were my family, and that was scaring me, because I thought, well, if I don't recognize them as my family, how am I going to get home? How am I going to leave the store and find my way out? And my mom was looking at something in an aisle or whatever, and I remember I walked up to her, and I stopped a distance, and I was staring at her. I couldn't recognize her. there was something familiar about her to me, but I just wasn't able to, it wasn't clicking that that was my mom. And I remember walking up to her, and I was thinking, okay, I really hope this is my mom, because I'm going to say, "Hey mom," to get her attention, and I hope that she responds the right way by, acknowledging me, because if not, this is going to get really weird. And you never want to have something bad really happen, because then that confirms that what you have is serious and it's a scary thing. And apart from that, uh, I had problems. Like I went home once, and I remember, I think I came home from school, and I got to the door, and I put the key in, and I thought, man, what if this is not my house? What if I got to the wrong house? Because when I would leave my house, I would stare at the trash cans, and I before I'd leave out of the driveway, I'd look over at the trash cans or something familiar to me, and I'd say, "You see that thing right there? When you come back home, you look at that one thing, and then you'll know that you're home." And so that's how I confirmed to myself for a while that I was at the right house. But I remember that feeling, that fear, that, well, what if I put in the key and I try to open it and it doesn't work? And then some stranger comes to the door and says, "Hey, what are you doing here?" How do you explain that? How are you able to explain that away? And it wasn't till years and years later that someone mentioned pseudo dementia, and I remember looking it up. And basically, it's the symptoms of somebody who has dementia, like the same symptoms. And I was reading over some of them, and I was like, that's it. That's what I had. Now, did I have it? I don't know. But it was as close of a thing, or close of a, explanation as I could get to, because, you try and tell that to people and they've never heard of it. But I don't know why that happened to me. But it was one of the scariest things to go through, because you feel like nothing, your mind can't register that things are real, that it can't, that part of you that recognizes faces as familiar, and environments as familiar to you, somehow is shut off. And then all of a sudden you're having to convince yourself over and over every single day that those things are real, and that you are in the right place, and that these people are family, and they're not harmful to you. And just the weirdest of things happened from that. And man, I tell you, that lasted a long time. It lasted years. And the forgetting, people, forgetting faces went away. But the, looking at a light and thinking, is that green, right? That's go. Excuse me. That's go, right? That lasted long, long time. And even now, I still get it. I still have problems every now and then. It never fully went away. But anyways, that was just something that came up for me, and it was a little interesting, hearing that individual being interviewed talk about his experiences. Like getting to a location, and or going to his restroom, and he is out of it, and then comes back to, and it's like freaking out because he doesn't know where he is. He thinks that he's somewhere else. Now, he had TBI. I didn't have that, but I don't know, man. Some of these things, even the simplest of things, like most common, depression is really common. Anxiety is really common nowadays. It's just like you mention it and people just nod their heads, but that was just, yeah, it was just weird to me. Anyways, yeah, I just came on to share, and I hope everybody's having a good day, and till next time.